This is the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the East Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down everything Districts 5 and 6, week in, week out. My name is Brandon Baney. I'm joined by our East Idaho expert, Sean Kane. Sean,
Howdy.
what's up?
Not much, just, watching U.S. Open tennis. Serena's last dance, as they would say. So that's what I've been kind of doing, watching that and, catching up on the football. I had to go back to the, luckily Idaho Sports has all those games you can go back and watch because I went camping this weekend while you guys worked hard. But, yeah, I've been going back and watching a lot of those games. So, yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is why we're the odd couple, because right now, in terms of like sports I would be watching, it would probably be like football. Obviously, college football has started. NFL is going to be baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. We're getting into the final month of the regular season. Like tennis is pretty low on the list for me, but that's like your number one because tennis is your favorite sport.
U.S. Open's my favorite. Besides Wimbledon, I love the U.S. Open. Love the end of the year atmosphere in New York, and pretty big on college football too. And I like baseball in October.
Yeah, right. Well, we're almost there.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to hit fast forward on anything yet though, because we are still technically in August as we're recording this, but by the time people are listening to this, the calendar will have turned to September. And so last week we had a full-fledged week of competition across just about every sport, just about every school was involved. And so let's dive right into it. Football, there was all these crazy things that happened, right? There was some really lopsided games at the Rocky Mountain Rumble. There were a couple of smaller schools in East Idaho that found themselves on the wrong end of some scores. But I want to start with some stability, the one constant that we can pretty much take to the bank for the last several years. And that is the West Side Pirates.
I knew when he said that was going to be it. And that was the first score I looked. I was up in the mountains, and the first score I wanted to see was that Firth West Side game. And sure enough, West Side didn't give any points, right? The classic West Side defense. They'll score 200 and something points this year and give up 8.
Yeah, seriously. And so they get a 22-0 shutout. And I bought into I drank the Kool-Aid a little bit. So we do these statewide football previews, and Tyson Moser, the coach at Westside, he's now the athletic director there as well. He said in his preview, and he was kind of like, yeah, it's going to be tough for us. We lost a very talented senior class, and we're going to have to break in some new guys, and even the coaches kind of agreed and picked Bear Lake in the preseason coaches poll. Now that could still come to fruition, but I think Coach Moser was underselling his team just a little bit. Now, are they going to be as dominant as they've been in the past? I don't think so, but they're going to be good again, and they will be in contention for the 2A title. They've got his son, Parker Moser, back as the main running back. Eli Brown is Blaze Brown's younger brother. He's at quarterback for this team. They bring back some really good linemen. So, it's like death taxes West Side football, right?
Yeah, And Firth brings back a bunch of good people too. Their quarterback Velasquez, and they've got a good team. So to go out there and do that with essentially a new group of dudes, right, and beat a team that is gonna, you're gonna put money on Firth being in the playoffs too, right? And that's crazy. And I think that's been the opening game. I think they said for like 13 or 14 years now, and it's always really close. Last year it was like 22-23. So, yeah, West Side is. I think they all have brothers. All those kids that graduated had brothers or something, man. A lot of same last names.
Yes, and that's small town football at its finest. And Firth, you mentioned last year, Firth almost beat West Side in that regular season opener. It went to overtime. West Side basically needed a rally at the very end of regulation, and so it was a wild game for Firth. And you're right, Gage Vasquez is back at quarterback. There's Alex Vasquez back on the team. All the Parks are back. Burton Park, Sam Park. The one guy Firth lost, and this kind of went under the radar, and I didn't even notice until I was calling this team's game at the Rocky Mountain Rumble. But Eric Blomquist, star defensive end, younger brother of Athen Blomquist, who was a great defensive lineman, he transferred to Skyline.
Oh.
So he's playing for the Grizzlies now. So,
okay.
Yeah, I totally wasn't on my radar until I saw him suited up for Skyline last week. So we'll get to Skyline in a second, but man, West Side wins 22-0. The game actually was called early. I don't know if you saw this or not, Sean. They were having like some power outages at Firth's Field. The first time it happened, they were able to get everything back up and running. The second time it happened, it was like in the fourth quarter. There wasn't much time left, and they're like, let's just call it a night.
Yeah, I didn't see that part of it, but yeah, I know there was some lightning going on in the weekend too, so that was a common occurrence, it seemed like, across the state.
Definitely. So West Side gets a win. I'll be honest, they weren't. I vote in the media poll every week for the football media poll. First 2 weeks, West Side was not in my top 5. I was kind of going off of what the coaches had said in the preseason conference poll and all that stuff. Yeah, West Side's in there now. They're the number 1 team in my poll. So I learned my lesson, certainly. And Firth, I think, is still going to be a great team as well, right? How many times have they started the year with a loss to West Side and then still gotten deep into the playoffs? So
yeah, and I think it's West Side's coach who said, if it's a game either team loses, it's not that big of a deal because it's not a conference game. Of course, you want to go out and win it, but he said that's just so important for both teams to go out there and see what they have to work with, and you gear it one way or the other. And Firth's been able to turn that around into super strong playoff runs. So that's what you got to do. You got to go out and play those tough games and get the fellas ready.
Yeah, 33 game winning streak now for West Side. The next closest, I'm trying to think. The next closest was Skyline, but they lost last week. And so you're talking single digits for like the next team with the longest winning streak. It might be Oakley at the 1A level, but so 33 games in a row for West Side. The win streak continues. Last time they lost was September 7th, 2019 to Snake River, and they only lost that game 7-6. So who knows how long this streak could be. Speaking of Snake River, they have the record, right? Most consecutive wins. I think it was 54. Back in the late 90s. Anyways, we'll get to Snake River in a second as well. Let's finish up with the 2A football discussion. The other, I thought the game of the week, honestly, was the game we had on IdahoSports.com, and it was the other District 5, District 6 matchup in 2A. It was Bear Lake traveling to North Fremont, and this game was wild as well. North Fremont had a couple of big plays that turned into long touchdowns, and late in the game, Bear Lake threatened, right? They were driving. There was just over a minute to go. They had the ball inside the 10, but then they got pushed back to the 15. It was fourth down. Bear Lake went for it, didn't get it. I think they went for a field goal. Actually, they went for the field goal, didn't get it. And North Fremont survives 24-22. But I think both of these teams are going to be really good this year as well.
Yeah, like you said earlier, Bear Lake was picked number 1 in the conference for a week. I don't think that will hold, but they're coming back really strong too. And if you have Fremont in the name, they're usually good at sports. And North Fremont, that was an instant classic. I watched some of that. Just 2 tough, really good defensive teams that kind of some big plays were the turn of the tide in that. And that's kind of what you see sometimes at 2A level. You can see a lot of back and forth, and someone breaks a 50-yard touchdown or something, and that could be the game. So super close.
Yeah, Carson Packer, 133 yards on 13 carries for North Fremont in the victory. And I really do think North Fremont, their ceiling is very high this year. And obviously so is Bear Lakes, as those two teams battled to a pretty entertaining ball game. West Jefferson was in action at the 2A ranks. They were playing Wendell. They got shut out 21-0. West J's got a new coach this year in Kip Blanchard. They've got a lot of new players that they had to, they had lost a lot to graduation. So they remain to be a work in progress. They made the playoffs last year though, so we'll always keep an eye on them. You had Ryrie traveling to Soda Springs, and we talked about last week how Soda was kind of the bad luck team last year, and they really wanted to come out and challenge themselves. They got waxed by Sugar Salem, and then they rebounded with a nice 30-20 win over a Ryrie team that I think is going to be better than people think.
Yeah, again, Soda Springs going out and playing those tough teams I think it's going to pay off as it goes on, and that's a nice win, I think, for a Soda, like a Soda Springs is kind of looking to get on track.
Definitely. And even Malad, Malad went and played Lyman, Wyoming. Lyman is a 3A power in the state of Wyoming. Very solid program. And Malad only lost 14-0. They've got a new coach, Kobe Crozier. He's actually a former West Side assistant. So Malad's hoping he can bring some of that pirate magic to the Dragons. And, even for Malad losing 14-0, I thought they had a lot to be encouraged by as well. So
yeah, definitely a little changing of the tide in Malad, but that's a good place to get started. I love their mascot, the Dragons, and yeah, good for them. A lot of teams just really reaching out and getting a lot of different teams on the schedule, which I don't remember seeing so much as maybe this year, as in years past, as getting those out-of-state teams on the schedule.
Right. I think everybody's ready, post-COVID now to get back to, playing more than just the teams that are in your geographic area, playing some interesting non-conference games. All right, let's make the jump then from 2A to the 8-man classic. Let's talk real quick about what happened in the 8-man ranks. I guess there was nobody from East Idaho playing in the 8-man classic, but let's just finish off the smaller schools and then we'll go to the bigger schools. To me, the most surprising result from the weekend in 8-man football was Rockland, a preseason top 5 team, one of a very small number of teams that people think could maybe hang with Kendrick, the defending champs. They go out and lose to Camas County 54-26. I was very surprised by this result. Yeah,
in the pick'ems thing, I definitely picked Rockland, so I was super surprised to see this score. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but I still think Rockland will have a pretty solid year. It's a non-conference game, so I think going into the conference play, they should be all right.
Definitely. A friendly reminder. That's a good reminder, Sean. Our Pigskin Picks game is back this fall, where you pick every football game in the state. And here's a little pro tip. The picks don't actually lock until Friday night at 7:00. So this year we're seeing more and more Thursday night games because of referee shortages and things like that. So all those Thursday games are like freebies, right? You see who won, and then you just go in and fill it in, and you can change your picks. So it doesn't lock till Friday at 7:00. So that's a pro tip there. The weekly winner gets $25. Our first winner, Sean, any guesses on where he was from?
Kellogg. I don't know.
You're close. It's a north town that starts with K. Kootenai. All the way up a Kootenai Warriors fan, all the way up in North Idaho. So we had to send that check in the mail. So you win $25 if you get the most games picked correctly for the week. And then we keep a season-long tally as well. And here's a cool thing we're doing this year at Idaho Sports. Whoever wins the season-long contest, right, who has the best track record throughout the whole season, we are going to make a $250 donation to that person's favorite school. So that could be, it could be Century, where you're at, Sean. It could be Snake River. It could be Middleton. I mean, it could be anywhere. So that's why you really want to play. First of all, it's fun. It's fun to beat the experts like me and Sean, but it's also, you could potentially be helping your school. Now, $250 drop in the bucket, but
it's something.
It's not nothing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you can find that right on the homepage, IdahoSports.com, our Pigskin Pick'em contest. Okay. I forgot what we were talking about. Oh, Rockland. Yeah. So Rockland drops that game. That was pretty surprising. The Bulldogs will have a chance to rebound this week. They will, well, maybe not this week. Oh, yes. Okay, they do. They will be playing Chalice Mackey. And so let's talk about Chalice Mackey, Sean. This is a co-op that was formed kind of like in the 11th hour. Basically, Chalice and Mackey had their own teams last year, lost a lot to graduation, didn't have the turnout they were hoping for fall camp. So they kind of got together. They've co-opted in baseball and softball the past couple of years. And so they got together and said, what if we co-opt in football? And so they kind of put a schedule together. They're going to be competing as a 1A D1 school. So they're going to be in Chalice's conference with Butte County and Grace. It was kind of a cool deal. I went back and watched the film of their first game on Friday night. They lost to Castleford 48-0, but it was cool to see it. The game was in Mackey. The first couple games will be in Mackey, and then the games later in the year will be in Chalice for the home games. And the uniforms were different, but everybody had their own unique number. So that was cool to see.
That's That's pretty cool, and it's nice because you get the sport keeps going. You hate to see it where they can't continue to play in the smaller area because they don't have enough guys, and we've seen that in a couple things with basketball and stuff. So I'm glad that they're able to do that and continue to play. And yeah, it's kind of cool. They probably could come up with some unique logo for that, but I'm sure both stadiums just are phenomenal settings to watch football up there in the mountains.
Yes, definitely. And so, yeah, people were wondering, what are they going to be called? In baseball, their co-op has been called the River Cats for a really long time. That they're calling themselves 7C because that is 7C is Custer County on the license plate. And that's the county that Chalice and Mackey are in. So it's, 7C Chalice Mackey. And that's what their team is called. They don't really have a nickname, so to speak, but it's exciting that they're able to play football. They're going to play Rockland this Friday evening. Also in Rockland's conference is North Gem. They played the Malad JV in kind of an 11-man, 8-man hybrid type deal, I think is what it was. Malad won 22-0. And in the victory, Sean, they attempted 0 passes. That's the North Gem we've come to expect, right?
Just running the ball.
Yes.
We're going to run it 50 times.
Yeah, basically that is exactly it for North Gem. They did have a lot of standout performers. Obviously they have a lot to replace, but they really think they've got a system in place, and so those players are really good at pounding the rock for North Gem. And now North Gem gets to play Camas County. It's a Camas County returns to the scene of the crime. If you'll remember last year in the opening round of the playoffs, North Gem was undefeated. Camas County had barely gotten in, and Camas County went to Bancroft and shocked the Cowboys and upset them in the first round of the playoffs. So now Camas County, coming off this big win over Rockland, gets a chance to take out North Gem again. That's going to be an interesting game on Friday.
Yeah, a tough way to start your season for whoever loses those games, right? But really kind of momentum shifter for Camas County to get those. That's 2 big wins if they can come out of that second one. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But North Gem will probably have something to say about that.
Well, and conversely, if North Gem gets the win, then they have to be feeling pretty good about, where they stand up against Rockland as well, as Rockland, lost to Camas County pretty handily. So it'll be an interesting measuring stick game for sure. Water Springs is the other 1A D2 team. They beat Hanson in a shootout 42-40. Did you see the stat line for Drew Plocker of Water Springs, Sean?
I did not. Nope.
He does it all for Water Springs. He plays quarterback. He runs the ball a lot. He obviously throws the ball. He's an all-state defensive back. He kicks and punts. He's a return man. He is the engine that makes Water Springs move. Check this out. He rushed for 303 yards and 3 touchdowns. He threw for 145 yards and a touchdown. And he collected 14 tackles on defense as well.
All right. Well, he's the fantasy player you want on your team coming up here. If you have a defensive slot too, right? Jeez. He did it all.
For sure. And so Water Springs got a very tight 42-40 win over Hanson. They are working with a new coach this year as well up there at Water Springs in Idaho Falls, and they are now off this week. 1A D1, we talked about Chalice Mackey. It's cool that they're co-oping. The bad news is they're in the same conference as Butte County and Grace. Grace played Cary. Cary now is a 1A D1 school, and Grace got a 7-0 shutout. It's not often that A, you beat Cary, but B, you shut him out, and that's exactly what Grace did.
Yeah, Cary beats teams 50-10, right?
Yeah.
Cary puts up points, so the shutout a Cary team is just kind of unreal. You'd be hard pressed to see too many shutouts in Cary. I would imagine.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting as Cary will now host Butte County this Friday night, and you can catch that game on IdahoSports.com. Friday night, 7:00 kickoff. And speaking of Butte County, oh my Lanta, Butte County played Valley in their season opener Friday, and they ended up coming away with a pretty significant win. The final score was 62 31-12. They were up 62-0 at halftime.
I'm guessing that some of the other players got a chance to get some minutes in the second half. Would be my guess, and that's what you want to do. You want to get people time. You don't want to, in games like that. As a coach, I'm always thinking you just don't want anyone to get injured for just something silly, and the playing time is just so important. And then Valley's still had to go out and compete and get time, and football becomes how many reps you get, how many game time situations do you get to play those things, those different scenarios, and sometimes just getting that can just really help out later on in the season.
Definitely. And for Butte County, you mentioned that the subs played in the second half. Yeah, check out this stat line from running back Trayton Allen. He's an all-state running back. He carried the ball 4 times. 3 of the 4 touches went for touchdowns, and he had like 104 yards rushing on 4 carries.
Okay. Well, there must have been a hole there, I guess. I don't know, for the whole field. It was just boom, boom. But yeah, wow. That sounds like West Side's running back from last year. What's his name?
Oh, Cage Brokens.
Brokens was always like 6 or 7 carries, 200 yards, 1 million touchdowns. So his night's done. Maybe he'll go make some tackles. I don't know. That's kind of how Cage Brokens was always getting those just big old runs.
Yeah, and spoiler alert, there's a younger Brokens that's on West Side this year. So
didn't see that coming.
Yeah, right. Shocking. Yeah, for sure. I misspoke earlier. I said Water Springs had the week off. They're actually playing Hagerman. They will travel to Hagerman for that matchup as well. And the 2A games that are on the schedule this week, we talked about Soda Springs and their difficult schedule. They are going to take on Firth. So good luck, Cardinals. That's going to be a tough battle, especially for a Firth team that's got to be pretty angry coming off of that loss to West Side. We have, speaking of West Side, they're going to be in action. West Side will be taking on Layton Christian from Utah. Bear Lake is going to play a Utah team as well. They're going to play Lyman, that Lyman team that just beat Malad 14-0. So we'll have to see. This will be a measuring stick game for Bear Lake and Malad as well, right?
Yeah, you'll get to see kind of how people are stacking up against some of the similar common opponents, and that's always kind of helps us as broadcasters and kind of figure things out a little bit as the season moves forward.
Definitely. And Malad will be playing Ryrie. They will travel to Ryrie for that contest. 1A games of note. Grace is going to be at Lighthouse Christian. Chalice Mackey at Rockland, as we already said. Camas County is going to play North Gem as well. And then a pretty interesting 2A battle that's going to be broadcast on IdahoSports.com. It's actually a Saturday contest. Saturday, 2:00 kickoff, as North Fremont will host Melba, all the way from West Idaho. That's going to be a good matchup, a pair of teams that expect to be going deep into the playoffs this year.
Yeah, Melba, a super tough team that's going to come down. So that's an exciting early matchup in that division. That should be a good one on Idaho Sports for sure.
Yeah, so it's Melba at North Fremont, 2 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. And West Jefferson this week will be at American Falls. That is a 3A school. American Falls played Aberdeen last week in their annual rivalry game. It was actually a game we were at last year, Sean. Aberdeen won pretty handily last year, and they win pretty handily again this year. 48-3 the final. The question is, can the Tigers stay healthy? That was their problem last year. They started really well out of the gate, suffered some injuries, and then kind of hit a lull.
Yeah, they had some really good players, and they just didn't have a lot of them. And so when those guys went down to injuries, because they're really hoping for playoffs and kind of getting out of that conference, and just didn't happen. But yeah, they were a fun team to watch, and what a great atmosphere in Aberdeen for a game. They had cannons. Yeah, it was just that was a cool place to watch a game. If you ever have a chance, get to Aberdeen. That's a fun little football town there.
Yeah, we had a great time in Aberdeen. Aberdeen was at American Falls. They made the long trip to American Falls for that game last week. First home game is this Friday. They will host Declo. a team that we saw last year in the playoffs in the 2A quarterfinals. Declo's 1-0, Aberdeen's 1-0. That should be a good game Friday night as well. You know, that 3A Southeast Idaho Conference, American Falls, Marsh Valley, Snake River, they all have new head coaches this year. They all went 0-3 in their season openers, and none of the games were particularly close. We talked about American Falls. Snake River was maybe the most surprising. They went to Kimberly and gave up over 500 yards of offense and lost 34-14. I was pretty surprised by that.
Yeah, I kind of thought that might be a barn burner when I saw that on the schedule. And Kimberly is a good team, though. They're just consistently always kind of good, and they were able to take it to Snake River.
Yeah, it was pretty surprising. Snake River will attempt to rebound. They'll play Filer. They will travel to Filer for that contest. American Falls will play West J, as we said. And then I got to see Marsh Valley at the Rocky Mountain Rumble, Sean. Marsh Valley actually kicked off the 2-day event by playing South Summit, Utah. They lost 47-13. And the thing about the Rocky Mountain Rumble, this was the biggest complaint that I heard, was the Utah schools start so early, right? Their first games of the year are August 12th, and Idaho's barely into two-a-days at that point. And so the last couple of years where it's become strictly an Idaho versus Utah thing, it's heavily tilted towards the Utah schools. You know, the Idaho schools really don't have much of a chance because they're coming fresh out of the gates while they're playing a Utah school that's already, had 2 games under their belts. So not surprisingly, Idaho only won 2 of the 8 games at the Rocky Mountain Rumble.
Yeah, I watched that Marsh Valley South Summit game, and just kind of out of the gun, you could just tell it was Marsh Valley's first game of the year. And South Summit, not going to take anything away from them. They're kind of a well-oiled machine. They kind of just did a lot of little things really well, I thought. And Marsh Valley looked like a team looking to kind of figure it out. And it's hard to go up to, Madison on that big field and figure it out in that kind of light, I think. So, but I still think Marsh Valley is good. I think Marsh Valley had a lot of good pieces, and I think they're going to kind of, you might forget about them a little bit, and then they're going to have a big win later on in the season. That's kind of what I see from Marsh Valley.
They have some dynamic athletes at the skill positions. Bradley Belknap is the new quarterback. Alex Vaughn is he caught, a 55-yard touchdown pass. They've got the Bastion twins, Corbridge and Christian, and they picked up a transfer from Highland. Ezra Godfrey is now playing at Marsh Valley.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't either until I showed up and saw Ezra Godfrey suited up for Marsh Valley. There's been a lot of transfers this offseason, and that's a topic for another time, as we learned on another podcast last week. So for Marsh Valley, they've got the skill guys. The key is going to be, can the offensive line give Belknap and company enough time? They lost all of their starters from a year ago. They're replacing a lot of good production up front. When Belknap had time, he was able to connect on some deep throws. So that's going to be the key for Marsh Valley moving forward. But there was a lot to like from that Marsh Valley team. You can't just look at the score and judge them off of that. They were walking into a trap with that setup at the Rocky Mountain Rumble. So let's talk about the other Rumble games that happened with East Idaho's 5A, 4A schools. Madison was the only East Idaho team to get a win at the Rocky Mountain Rumble. Minico was the other team that got a win, but Madison came through with the final game of the Rocky Mountain Rumble. They beat Tooele, Utah, in a game that was never close, really. They beat them 35-14.
Yeah, nice bounce back for Madison after going up to Hawaii and kind of not winning a winnable game. So I think that's good for Madison to get that win and get Idaho on the board there. That's helpful. But I think Madison is again like a team I remember last year where they can just kind of change and adapt and kind of come up with different stuff. And I think that will be very important for them as the season goes on.
Definitely. Madison goes to 1-1 on the season with the victory there. I guess before I tackle the 5A, 4A stuff, we should wrap up what happened in the 3A ranks. Sugar Salem, this just in, they're pretty good. They beat Filer 69-0. They're 2-0 to start the year. To me, kind of an underreported story was Teton getting a victory over Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Teton's got a new coach this year, David Joyce. He previously was the head coach at Jackson Hole. And so he goes from Jackson Hole to Teton to the other side of the pass. And he had taken a Jackson program that was pretty down in the dumps and turned them into a pretty solid team. He got him to back-to-back Wyoming 4A championship games. And then he goes and beats his old team 32-14. So I think Teton, look out for the Timberwolves.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't know that coaching change had occurred, because I think I remember Jackson Hole played maybe the Pocatello Thunder in the Rumble a couple years past, and it was a very tightly contested game because they had just come off being in the state championship in Wyoming. So yeah, that's great for Teton.
Yeah, that was an exciting time for Teton fans. And then South Fremont went all the way up to Timberlake, all the way up in northern Idaho, and got out of there with an 18-14 win. Preston Stoddard was the IdahoSports.com player of the game. This was a game on IdahoSports.com. He had a really big, it was a tight game, and then he had a huge kickoff return for a touchdown early on in the second half. He had 190 all-purpose yards, also scored on a touchdown reception. So for South Fremont to come away with the 18-14 win, very impressive, and they are quietly 2-0 to start the year as well. So District 5 goes 0-3, District 6 goes 3-0. And now we're getting some of those cross-district games where Teton will play Marsh Valley this week. And so we'll see if District 5 can get off the schneid. South Fremont will play Salmon. That's a 3A, 2A matchup. And Sugar Salem will play Shelley in their annual rivalry game. That's another game that you can see on IdahoSports.com coming up on Friday night. Speaking of Shelley, they had a pretty cool experience. They got to go over to the blue turf at Albertson Stadium, Boise State University, to play Star Valley, Wyoming. Now, the Russets lost that game 21-7. I don't know we can take too much away. I still think Shelley's going to be a pretty good team this year. Yeah,
we got to see Shelley a couple times last year, and I really like what they do defensively and offensively. I think they're going to be they're a tough little 4A team. It's probably one of the smaller 4A schools, but they bring it. And not to mention, that's got to be one of the toughest 4A conferences in football, with Blackfoot, Skyline. You've got a dangerous Hillcrest team, and now Idaho Falls too is in there. So that conference is just, that's a tough conference, and they were fighting for the conference championship towards the end of the year. So Shelley's going to be a team to watch.
Definitely. So you mentioned Hillcrest, Brennan Mossholder in his second year as the head coach. Hillcrest played Century Friday night and got a 34-8 win. This is a Century team that is still rebuilding, right? They had a lot of young guys last year, and now they're slightly older, but they're still kind of young compared to some other teams.
Yeah, there's not too many starters from last year. They've got a new quarterback. They're kind of learning. They're going to be learning on the fly, and Ryan Fleshman, the coach, and they've got a lot of good, old coaches in there helping these guys, and it'll just be a process. And, and Hillcrest is a team that had a rough year last year, and you just knew they weren't going to come back and have the same kind of year as they did last year. And sometimes it just takes a little bit, and Hillcrest looked good. I know Century's, they just had too many turnovers that game, and in football, turnovers is what's going to kill you.
Definitely. So Century 0-1 to start. Hillcrest off to a 1-0 start, which is great for them. Bonneville went down to Logan, Utah, and played a pretty good Logan Grizzlies team and only lost 14-0. I think Bonneville is really primed to turn a corner this year as well.
Yeah, Bonneville had chances to win a bunch of games last year, if my mind doesn't mistake me, and they were kind of just always on the cusp of getting there, and again, just that's a hard division, and we'll see what they're made of when they get into conference play up there.
Yeah, easier said than done, that's for sure. In that league, Idaho Falls was playing Thunder Ridge. They got up 15-0. The Tigers did, and then Thunder Ridge scored the next 25 to get out of there with a 25-15 win. That was a game that was on IdahoSports.com. So, Idaho Falls a couple of times last year had problems finishing games off. They're 0-1 to start. Thunder Ridge bounces back after that loss to Minico in week 0. So they're now 1-1 on the season. So a nice bounce back win for Thunder Ridge. And then how about Blackfoot? Blackfoot goes over to Emmett in a shootout, wins 49-32. Jackson Grimmett has 6 touchdowns. 5 of them go to Javante King.
Yeah, I have King's stat line in front of me because it jumped out of me. 13 catches, 131 receiving yards, and 5 touchdowns. So, hello. But the game was still close. I mean, really, it was not a blowout by any means. It was more of a shootout, right? And I think Emmett is still a really good team too. But that combination of King and the quarterback and running back, I think Blackfoot's going to be real dangerous.
Yeah, they return their top 4 skill guys. We've talked about it. Grimmett at quarterback, Austin Ramirez, the running back, and then King and Deegan Hale at wide receivers. So, yeah, look out for Blackfoot. They're 1-0, and they went all the way over to Emmett to get that road win, which is nice for them, certainly. And now we'll get back to, and I guess one more 4A, 5A game, and then we'll dive into the rest of the Rocky Mountain Rumble. Rigby, second week in a row. They go on the road. They go down to Utah to play a Skyview Bobcats team that has been one of the top contending teams in their classification in Utah the last several years. They've had a couple players move on to big time colleges like Utah State, and Rigby goes down and takes care of business as usual. They get a nice road win over Skyview, Utah, by a final of 27-8. 2 of Rigby's 4 scoring drives lasted 17 and 19 plays. So we know Rigby can hit you with the home run, but it's also nice for the Trojans to show that, hey, we can run a 19-play drive that lasts an entire quarter and finish it off with a touchdown as well.
Yeah, Rigby kind of on the same start as they were last year. Is the defense, again, is really, they're putting up a ton of points, but, they didn't give up any points in the first game and only 8. So now they've offensively put up 51 points, and over 2 games they've only given up 8, which if you're a head coach, that's what you love to see. I mean, the offense is great, but when you're able to just shut teams out or only give them 8 points, that is what you're after.
Yeah, and Luke Flowers and Brady Packer proving to be a dynamo duo. They hooked up twice for touchdowns. Flowers had 3 touchdowns overall. Cohen Peck, the tight end, caught the other one for the Trojans. So that was a nice win for Rigby as well. And boy, they look tough. So we will wait and see. All right, the rest of the Rocky Mountain Rumble now, and we'll kind of just go chronologically. We talked about Marsh Valley. They lost the opener. The other East Idaho team to play on Friday night was Skyline, and they came out and played the Stansbury Stallions from Utah. They lose the game 68-42. This was like a back and forth shootout for about two and a half quarters, and then in the second half, Skyline just ran out of steam a little bit and fell behind by too much. Again, third game of the year for Stansbury, first for Skyline. Skyline's going to score 42 a lot of nights, and a lot of nights that's going to be good enough to get the win.
Yeah, there's plenty of basketball games that didn't have this high of a score line last year. So, if you get 42, if Skyline gets 42 against any other Idaho team, I would put money on Skyline winning that game. So, yeah, just came up a tough opponent. But again, I think it's just a good measuring stick for Skyline to see what they got. Maybe make some changes defensively, and that's going to be again a Skyline team that comes back looking to repeat. And they have a lot of good pieces on that team as well.
Yeah, they gave up a lot of big plays. Skyline did, certainly. Skyline got a lot of big plays as well. Kenyon Sadiq returned a kickoff like 85 yards for a touchdown. Skyline does this thing where they'll hand off to another guy. They do the classic, return guy will hand off to the other return guy, and they'll get downhill that way. Caden Taggart played really well, 6 catches for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns. He made 1 touchdown. Lachlan Hackey led him perfectly, but the momentum took Taggart out of the back of the end zone, and he went like crashing into the fence that's up by the end zone. He flipped over it like a baseball player, flips over the dugout railing. I thought he was going to fall all the way over, but he he was able to stay, and then he came back down on the field to play. That was an exciting play for sure. And I will say that, you look at Stansbury scoring 68 points. I gotta be honest here, and I'm not too worried about Stansbury fans coming after me because I don't think Utah people listen to this, but I was pretty disappointed with Stansbury. They kept pretty much all of their starters in the entire way, which to me was a little distasteful. Down the stretch, the whole fourth quarter, I mean, the game was never in doubt. Skyline had kind of, waved the flag and put in their backups. Lachlan Hackey was subbed out for Carmine Garcia, the backup running back, and they started subbing in guys on defense, and Stansbury never did. Like they, even their quarterback, Stansbury's starting quarterback, was still running quarterback designed runs like late in the game. Like, you're just asking for your guy to get hurt. I sincerely hope nobody does, but to me, it was kind of bush league. And I'll be honest, I was talking to another Utah school the following day about it, and they said, we're not surprised. That's how Stansbury is. They're kind of jerks. And so, Skyline fans will tell you it was kind of unnecessary for them to keep their starters in the whole way. I didn't see what purpose it served. And so anyways, I was pretty disappointed with the lack of sportsmanship from Stansbury, Utah.
I was just thinking maybe Utah's max prep rankings had some equation where former championships gave them more points, but maybe
right.
that's just wishful thinking.
They do. I don't think they do anything with max preps. They do. They have their own in-house RPI type thing, I think.
Yeah, I think you're correct there. Yeah, that's always bad. You get football is just, you're one injury away from your season being in the, done because of how important a skilled guy could be, to your team. So I'm not saying someone can't step up, but I think I'm always on the thing of just get them out of there and get those kids minutes, man. Nothing builds a program like minutes. I can tell you Westside is good because those kids get minutes that don't play all the time because they're blowing people out. And if they're the record for how to do things, I'm following that record, that map because they do it real well.
Definitely. And this also happened. A Stansbury kid got ejected for throwing a punch as well. So, and it was their leading tackler on defense. So anyways, not the greatest sign of sportsmanship from our friends to the south in Utah, but Skyline's going to bounce back. They'll be fine. The second day of the Rumble, Pocatello came out and they played Morgan. They lose 35-7. Dre Contreras is kind of the next guy in line in terms of Pocatello quarterbacks. He didn't play on Saturday, and I'll admit I didn't have time to ask because there's only X amount of time between games. I'm pretty much scrambling to get ready for the next game.
I guess he was hurt and he hasn't been cleared to play as far as I know yet.
I mean,
he's been hurt coming into the season or during practice, during preseason, and he wasn't cleared to play yet. And the last thing I heard is he still isn't, but I don't know. I haven't heard a whole lot from that camp.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I guess the thing that threw me off was he was dressed up. He was in full pads, and he just stood on the sideline with his helmet off the whole game. In his hand. He was active. He was engaged on the sideline, but he didn't play. Obviously,
I believe it's a leg injury, and they just, they do whatever the pregame thing to check to see if they're ready to go. And I guess he didn't pass that or didn't pass it before, or maybe they just didn't, want anyone thinking he wasn't going to play. Sometimes you just gotta, you don't want to leave it up to chance. But I think that's a difference maker for the Pocatello Thunder. He got in last year, and I could have saw him playing all year last year with the games he got into last year. So I think that's going to be, I'll be big for them, I think, going forward.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had to start the Black and Blue Bowl against Highland.
Yeah, I believe that's true. And I can't remember how he played 2 or 3 games, and he looked pretty good. And I know there was talk about maybe this guy could be, the quarterback, because they, those other, Payne, you probably put Payne anywhere, he could probably do it. Like, we need you to do this. I could see him doing it. So, but you got to trust your guys and stuff. But I think they saw a future in this guy, and I just, from what I understand, it was a leg injury, and he just wasn't cleared to play. But don't quote me on that.
Sure, but you're right. The offense was certainly different. They went with the sophomore Hunter May at quarterback. In true Pocatello fashion, the backup QB can't wear a QB number. Dre was 37, I believe, last year. He's now number 2, but Hunter May is number 35. So he's back there playing quarterback. He's a good athlete. And he tried to push the ball. The biggest problem for Pocatello was they're a downfield passing attack, right? They love to hit the home run ball. The wind was so bad on Saturday in Rexburg that it was almost impossible unless you were throwing with the wind. And even with the wind, it was causing passes to kind of be all off kilter. So it was really hard for Pocatello to pass with the wind that was going on. The real turning point, though, was they lined up for a punt. And I didn't go back and watch the replay. I should have done this. But in real time, this is what it looked like to us in the booth. The punter lines up for Pocatello. He goes to punt. Hunter May is the personal protector. The punter, goes to punt, Garrett Keller, and Keller punts it, and it goes like right into the butt of Hunter May.
Oh no.
And it like bounces back to Keller, the punter, and he's punting from his own end zone. So all of a sudden there's 2 Morgan guys there to wrap him up. He gets spun around, and he doesn't obviously want to get tackled for a safety. So he, with his back turned to the field, just throws it behind his back one-handed like that. And Hunter May catches it. Now it was for like a loss of 4 yards, but it
wasn't a safety.
Right. It was a pretty incredible athletic play, actually, from the Pocatello special teams. But that, I don't know, that kind of summed up the day for Pocatello. And I think they'll be much better as well. You can't really judge them on this 35-7 loss. Highland played as well. They played Lehigh, Utah, which was by far the best team there. In terms of the Utah teams that were coming, there was no doubt Highland got the tough draw. They got Lehigh. And Highland is dealing with a pretty significant injury right now. Their starting running back, Jackson Riddle, is out with a collarbone injury, broken collarbone, and he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. And so they kind of went with a pair of defensive players at running back. They kind of alternated. Kai Callan, who normally is a corner, he played running back. And then for the first time since his freshman year, All-State linebacker Mason Fulmer got in and played some running back for Highland as well. So
you remember Fuller getting in when Caleb DeMuzio went out in the playoffs, and pretty good. And yeah, everyone always kind of thought he might be a running back in the making, but man, he's a lights out linebacker.
Yeah, that Lehigh team was no joke. They've got their quarterback is committed to Colorado State. They've got a defensive end that had 23.5 sacks last year. Lehigh's punt return guy led the entire nation in return yardage a year ago. So they're legit. Highland loses 42-7. The one touchdown came on a pick six from Kai Callan. And for Highland, again, I don't think you can take too much away from this game. Highland's got potential. I'll tell you, their defense, I thought, actually played really well, despite allowing the 42 points. Their front seven, I think, is going to be a strength again for Highland, especially the linebackers. Yeah. And if they can get Riddle back and just work on, they had some drop passes and just the timing was off a little bit on some of the routes. I think Highland's going to be pretty good.
Yeah. And, last year the defense was great for Highland too. And, if your defense can get it locked in, you can make those little adjustments in the offense. I think easier. So yeah, I think Highland's going to be tough. I can't wait, for that. Highland Rigby is always in the back of my mind because that game is always, down the road somewhere, and you just get so excited for it.
Yeah, well, before Highland Rigby this Friday night, we have Highland at Skyline, East Idaho game night.
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah, I forgot. That's going to be a great game.
Oh, that's going to be a fantastic broadcast. Lauren Jensen will be on the call for that game Friday night from Ravston Stadium. Or actually, Lance Taylor will be on the call for that game from Ravston Stadium on IdahoSports.com as Highland will take on Skyline. And yes, that is going to be a phenomenal game for sure. And that's really what's happening in football. I guess Preston also did play on Thursday. They played South Sevier, Utah, and lost 31-21. But the Pirates were a lot more competitive in that game than they were in the season opener against Lakeland. So Preston's a team to keep an eye on as things move along as well. This is going to be a big volleyball weekend, though, in East Idaho, Sean. The annual Peg Peterson tournament that's hosted by Highland is coming to Pocatello, and this is one of the premier regular season tournaments in the state of Idaho for volleyball.
Yeah, I got a hold of Travis Bell, the Highland athletic director, because I wanted to know how long have they been doing this tournament, and he's like, I don't know. And he said at least 20 years, so probably even longer than 20 years. So you've got a tournament that's been around for over 20 years is just amazing. You've got a ton of teams. If you look at the teams that are coming, you've got multiple teams that are ranked in the coaches poll throughout all the divisions. You've got a Sugar Salem, you've got Wood River, you've got Highland, which is ranked. You have Centennial from Boise, you have Fruitland, who's always good. Rigby, Snake River, Shelley always has a tough volleyball team. You got Filer, Bear Lake, Malad always has good volleyball. Preston and Gooding and Skyline and Middleton. I didn't name them all, but you just got talent across the board. I was going through. You've got all these teams. You got Wood River, who just had a big upset of Twin Falls. Well, they're calling it upset. Wood River's been pretty solid in volleyball and really competing with Twin Falls, but they're coming off that kind of big win versus their conference rivals. So really, some just really good pool play. They're getting little pods or pools, and they'll play it out into the different divisions. And it's really nice. You've got Highland, and then you've got the MEC hosting some of those games, and the MEC is just a stone throw away from Highland.
Yeah, and they'll set up, there could be up to like 4 matches at a time going on in the MEC, the Mountain View Event Center, for sure. Sugar Salem won the Peg Peterson tournament last year, so we will see if the Diggers can repeat. They're going to be pretty good again this year in 3A volleyball. Peg Peterson was just an icon in terms of athletics, not just in Pocatello and for Highland, but really girls athletics in the state of Idaho. She was really a pioneer. She came to Pocatello in 1961, which was, some time ago. And she started working at Highland in 1969 and kind of volleyball started under her watch at Highland. She was the pioneer, laying the groundwork for what's now
women's sports in general. I think all women's sports were started essentially because of her at Highland and kind of across the state getting women or girls sports going.
Yeah, and it wasn't just volleyball. She coached basketball at Highland. She coached track and field. Look at this. As a basketball coach, first year or first time she takes Highland to state, they win it. She never had a losing season. Career record of 240 and 57. That's a lot of 20-win seasons.
Yeah, and then she coached all 15 girls track events while helping the team take second. Only coached 15 events.
Yeah,
no problem. Jeez,
the throwers, the jumpers, the sprinters. And volleyball, of course, she was outstanding as well. She took Highland to state 11 out of 17 years in volleyball, 23 years as a head coach, 364 wins, 189 losses, which again is just outstanding. So,
and that's why she was introduced to the Hall of Fame of Idaho sports in 2000. An easy choice for that. I don't, there, you don't even have to vote. Get her the black.
Seriously, there should probably be an award named after her at some point.
I'm surprised there's not, really, actually, now that you think of it, but yeah, there should be.
Definitely. So one of the great events for volleyball is coming to Southeast Idaho this week. Now, these games won't actually count for anything, Sean. New rule from the IHSAA: regular season tournament games will not count towards your conference standings, will not count for the Max Preps rankings. So, there won't be anything official that goes down, but winning this tournament is still a significant accomplishment.
Yeah, and you know why it's what I like about it is you get that cross conference play. It doesn't matter if you're 3A or whatever A, you can win it, and it's really cool when you see a smaller school. I love that when a smaller school beats the bigger school, and that's why I like tennis tournaments when we get to play all the different divisions too, and you really just get to see who has the best team, the best players just showcased, and it doesn't matter your division, it just matters who plays best in that weekend. I mean, you might not even be the best team, but just have a good weekend, get a couple wins and get a little momentum. But that's like volleyball. Your normal match in volleyball isn't like a tournament, and I think most coaches will tell you that tournament experience is what makes or break you. So if you have a good Peg Peterson tournament, the sky's the limit, because you only get so many opportunities to get that tournament experience.
Definitely. It's going to be a lot of fun to see how that all goes down this weekend. That'll do it for this edition of the East Idaho Prepcast. We've gone long. I apologize, Sean. We'll be a little more concise next time. But thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
All right. For Sean Kane, I'm Brandon Baney. We'll see you next time on IdahoSports.com.